It's my great pleasure to welcome two ladies who need absolutely no introduction, Shabana Azmi ma'am and Sangeeta Datta ma'am. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Welcome, pleasure.
So we're here to talk about the Ray season at the BFI, which is taking place throughout July and August. So Shabana ma'am, I'd like to start with you. Now I understand when you were offered Shatranj Ke Khiladi, you said yes immediately and asked no questions at all. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So at the time, how familiar were you with Satyajit Ray himself, the man Satyajit Ray, and his works? Considering that the majority of his works were in Bengali up until then, did you expect that you would get the chance to work with him in a Hindi feature?
Listen, I am a student of the Film and Television Institute of India, and Ray was somebody we saw almost every single day. So I was very familiar with his work. But of course, he hadn't worked in Hindi or in Urdu before that. So for me, it was like a distant dream because I don't speak any Bengali. And when the chance came, it was a very interesting story that he had picked up. And although I have a very tiny part in it, I was absolutely delighted I got the opportunity. And it surprises me that it's such a small part, and yet so many years later, when there's a retrospective on Ray, then Shatranj Ke Khiladi seems to be quite a central piece. And we are having a premiere of it at the Venice Film Festival.
Right.
You know, it's called. So I'm lucky.
And Shabana ji is also the poster girl for the BFI season, as you see. Giant posters everywhere.
How does that feel, Shabana ma'am? As you know, considering the range of work that is being kind of displayed at BFI, how does it feel to be the poster girl for the whole season?
I've just been a lucky gal, you know, at the right place at the right time, and that's just pure good luck.
Right, Sangeeta ma'am, can I come to you now? Now, I'm currently reading Torun Majumdar's autobiography, Cinema Paradiye, and the late should say Torun Majumdar sadly passed away yesterday. Now, he's actually spoken in that book, he's spoken about the buzz in Kolkata when Poter Pachali released.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of on those lines, can you tell me about your introduction to Ray? And what was your first memory of watching a Ray film?
Yeah, as I said earlier, Pote Pachali is before my time. So although chronologically it's the first film, I actually remember seeing Gopika and Bhagavan as the first film, which was a children's film, which I saw as a young child. And because the story was already with us, you're told since you're an infant, it was absolutely marvelous to see that literary element being transferred onto the big screen. And that's true for a lot of Ray's films. I mean, barring a few screenplays which are original, almost all his films are adaptations of well-known stories by very well-known writers. So yes, Gopi Gayan and the magic of the boons that they get from King of Ghosts, whatever he did with the dance of the ghosts, the entire sequence, which is musical, and the dance of the ghosts, all of those things which were so cinematic, it was just marvelous. So I do remember that as my first one. And then Pote Pachali a little later, I was also part of a film society movement at that time, which Ray himself had started with Chidananda Dasgupta. So there's a very big historical tradition. In fact, I must tell you that in Jadavpur University, the day we had our, we were awarded our degrees, the convocation, Satyajit Ray was awarded his DPhil, honorary DPhil, and he was there.
Wow.
And that's the first day I summoned up enough courage to talk to him. And when I told him that I'm working for the Film Society movement, he actually invited us to come and talk to him later, where he talked about some European films which we should see. And walking into that historical study, which we've seen so much in photographs and has been recreated, that's just a marvelous memory that we have.
That's amazing. That's very rare. You're very lucky, but I mean, both of you are very lucky to have those memories. We can only see it on TV screens. Unfortunately, we're really short on time, but a couple of questions I would like to get in. Shabana ma'am, now I recall reading somewhere that when tea was served in Satyajit Ray's house, it was served exactly the same way that your mother used to serve it. Sorry, when tea was served in Satyajit Ray's house, it was served in exactly the same way that your mother used to serve it, with the tea cozy and that sort of thing.
That's true. I mean, it was a huge ceremony. You know, he up to tea, which is what my mother drank too, and it would come in a tray, and it was really in the proper English tradition. And suddenly it warmed the cockles of my heart, because that was what we experienced every single day at home. And study, you cannot imagine a study with more books than that. There were books on the floor, there were books on the table, there were books on shelves, there were books just everywhere. It seemed like, I don't know how this huge big man had fitted into those.
Ma'am, this is actually my question is actually related to the books. Now, Satyajit Ray and your father, BFI Azmi sahab, were both regarded as literary geniuses. Did you see any parallels between both of them? No. In fact, the question has not even come to my mind, except that I do remember that my father's study was also filled with books. And every time my mother would try, actually my mother was very sensitive to the fact that the books, never mind where they're lying, and even if covered by dust, they should be removed from there, which is completely different from Javed. Is exactly like that. He has books all over in his study, and I keep trying to settle his books, and he says, "Have mercy on me. This is the only area that is, have mercy on me. Please don't try to settle." So I don't think that anybody in his house, in Ray's house, could have even dared to think, all right, we need to dust this particular thing. Also, lots of papers, you know, it was constantly writing. But in the sense of, were they similar? Well, they were concerned with humanist issues. My father was more politically inclined. Satyajit was far more humanist. But they were observers, and they had very delicate, nuanced things that they were able to capture. If you see his film written by my father called Garm Hawa, you notice that in the relationship between the brother and the sister, in the tiny little relationships, in a sense, that's much more Satyu, because of the way Satyu directed it. It was also the writing. Sure.
Writing. Mother who acted in Garm Hawa, Shaukat Kepi, she said it was so amazing to work because it didn't seem like dialogue at all. It seemed like I was just speaking from life. So that quality the two of them certainly had.
Now, I am pretty much out of time. So last question, really towards you, Sangeeta ma'am, but Shabana ma'am, if you have anything to add, please do. The Ray season that's coming up at the BFI. We won't talk about the films because I think you've programmed almost every film, which is amazing for somebody like me to be able to get a chance to watch these films online. On a cinema screen. We've seen online plenty of times. Now, the events that you have, there's a couple of talks that you're doing. There's one on the film language of Satyajit Ray and one about his home and his world, the legacy that he has left. So if you could just tell us a little bit about both those talks. And then the final question for really the both of you is, what has his influence and his legacy on yourselves been?
Okay, to just start with the talks, I'm doing the curator's talk today, the season introduction talk today. It's scheduled at 6 o'clock this evening, after which I after which I introduce one of my favorite films, John Oren, which will be screened. But in the talk today, it's an illustrated talk, so I have a lot of clips which are very carefully chosen to show on one side the very wide gamut of, just stories that Ray narrated, and also choosing sections which tell us much more about this particular style of filmmaking, which was so different when it first came on screen, and perhaps just direct the audience not only to the stories, but to the manner in which they were told. And on the 16th of July, we have the study day, which is a great opportunity for people who are more interested for in-depth information and knowledge to come and spend 6-7 hours really, where a whole series of speakers have been invited to come and talk on various aspects of Ray, and then we'll end with a very exciting panel. So that's, starting from 12 noon on the 16th of July. That's going to be an interesting day as well. And these are, this is part of the education aspect of BFI, and I just absolutely love this, the fact that we are able to come and talk to the audience and have a more concentrated group of people who come back over and over again to know more about a filmmaker. That knowledge building exercise is very beautiful. I've done it before with Ritik Ghatak and the earlier Ray and the Tagore seasons. So it's been very rewarding.
Great. And in terms of influence and legacy on your work as a filmmaker as well?
Well, as I said, we've grown up on Ray, not just through his films, also through his writing, because, by the 80s, by the 70s, mid-70s, he was one of the leading writers in Bengal. And so we grew up on the detective fiction, we grew up on Ekdojon Goppo, all the short stories, and all that marvelous transcreation into little television films. So really, Ray's been all around us, just as Tagore is all around us. So whether you're doing this consciously or not, certain things do seep in. And after Ray passed away, when I was in Bombay, and I was also part of the Film Society there, we showed his entire retrospective. And that's the chance, like early 90s, 92, 93, when I got a chance to see his films again chronologically from the beginning to the end. And that, I must say, was a life-changing experience. That stayed with me because by then I was grown up as well. And that stayed. And when we think of stories and characters and treatments, a lot of that observation and that deep empathy that you can have with characters, and even minor characters, to bring them to life and not keep them as flat and wooden, all of those ideas come in.
It's amazing. And Shabana ma'am, the influences that he's left with yourself through Shatranj Ke Khiladi and of his other works as well.
Well, for me, because I'm an actor, the greatest influence obviously is the care with which he cast his characters. He would take great care to see that they look like the part. And he had so many interesting faces that he chose. Not people who were there for star value, but because they fit the character. And for me, the play of light in his films is something that very, very deeply moves me, because, see, when you think of Ray, you think of a master storyteller. But he is a master storyteller within the medium of film. And he uses the camera in a way that is an observation about human life, but also because of the way he frames it, you feel a greater connect with it. And that style of filmmaking, obviously something which is just ingrained in my system, and I really, really like that.
Shabana ma'am, Sangeeta ma'am, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It was great. I could talk to you all day, but unfortunately we're out of time. But thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing the Ray films at the BFI.
Thank you, Bhaskar.
Thank you so much.